All right, folks. We conclude today chapter 9. Chapter 9, speaking about God's attributes of intelligence, emotions, and the relationship they are to God, as that is the power of God within creation. And what we explained is that God's divine wisdom is so infinitely removed from him, as is so infinitely removed that you can't even say that to God that there is intelligence. He's beyond it. Not like, we would say, oh, if you're sitting in a room with Albert Einstein, his intelligence is going to be way beyond us, way beyond me. Something I can't get. Way, eons beyond. But eons beyond just means that you're beyond, and it's relative to you, because in the end, his intelligence is, comparable and at least measurable. But when we speak about God, he's not defined at all by any intelligence. And yet, intelligence comes from him. I don't mean our intelligence, well, that too, but we're talking about divine intelligence, the intelligence in the world of Atzilus, divine wisdom in that world, that spiritual world, a very lofty intelligence. Yet, before God, it is the equivalent of a simple action of me holding a cup and moving it, which there isn't that much. By us, there's 5 degrees of separation, as we spoke about, from intelligence to emotions, emotions to thinking, thinking to speaking, and speaking to action. And the capacity to be able to have intelligence versus just a movement is incomparable. But yet, they're comparable. 5 degrees of separation. But by God Almighty, that action, that just the movement of something, which is very simplistic compared to the capacity of speaking versus where it comes from, thought versus emotions, that's beyond language, versus the intelligence where it ultimately comes from. All incomparable. Yep, comparable. By God, the action and the intelligence are equal before him. Why? Because he's beyond both. He's not defined by both. There's no gather, no definition. Yet, it does come from him. So in which manner do the divine attributes, his divine intelligence and kindness, God's kindness we're talking about. Now, I just want to repeat this to make sure we get a clarity. It's not that God's kindness is so much greater than ours, so infinitely more. No. He's beyond it. Him, the essence of God. He's not defined by kindness. That's a parameter. That's a definition. Yet, and we'll not finish the thought, yet, we'll finish. How does it then come about that there's divine intelligence and divine kindness? Well, this is through tzimtzum, contraction. God contracts upon, and the metaphor he uses is like of hair. You got your brains over here, and then you got hair. Cut your hair, right? It's a part of you, but you cut it. It's not painful. I mean, it might be painful, the look of the haircut afterwards. Cutting the hair is not painful. God forbid where it comes from in your brain, you cut that. Well, that's extremely painful and damaging. So that's a metaphor. What's the metaphor? Is that from the head, from the brain, is such a diminution, such a contraction of the life force that's in the brain, it's the skull, but again, it's for the sake of the metaphor, right? The skull, well, you're right, don't even have to speak about the brain itself, even the skull, that from there, such a diminution, such a come down, such a contraction of the life force that now it's so attenuated that you have a hair that has so little life to it that you can cut it and it's not painful. That's a metaphor for us to understand that the 10 divine attributes of God are contracted. Now, what is it contracted to become? Well, first we speak about infinite light, and there's just light. Light, when it doesn't have a container to hold it or to give it parameter, right, called Kali, it has it's infinite in quality. So what now, through the contraction, what it creates, or emanates rather, it's not creation yet. This is before the act of creator. This is just to have a divine wisdom, a divine kindness. So what comes out from the contraction is vessels. Vessels meaning a container. Well, wisdom is a container. Chachma is a container. Chachma is Chachma. It's not Bina, and it's not emotions. So it's a container that has parameters, has some form of definition. And this is what happens through the contraction, that the Ein Sof becomes clothed in the vessels of Chabad. And this is what Maimonides said, that God is the knower, the known, and the knowledge is one. And that's why there's nothing added to him, because he's knowing himself. So through this contraction, we have the capacity now of divine knowledge, divine intelligence. Now, even though this is a contraction that is so removed that before that contraction there's no vessel to contain the light, all there is infinite light. And again, that's even metaphoric, because light, does have some, really, light only has a parameter and has a definition is because it bounces off something. That bouncing off of whatever it bounces is what contains it, what gives it a parameter, definition, limitation. If there wasn't, which by the way, this ties in, and not to go off on this, on the first day of creation, let there be light. Well, it wasn't sun. The sun was on the fourth day. So the light that we're talking about on the first day is of infinite nature. It didn't have, it had a limited vessel that contained it. As opposed to the sun, which is a body. Body means a vessel that has some kind of parameter limitation, right? So this is what has occurred in order that there should be now something called a divine attribute. Now, so we're saying that that divine attribute of God's wisdom, is so removed because God's not defined by that at all. Not just beyond it. There's no reality of that in the Ein Sof of intelligence or emotion. It comes and emanates, and it's in the world of Atzilus. And now here's the paradox, which makes it really something difficult to wrap our minds around, is that which is so infinitely, God is so infinitely beyond divine intelligence, divine good, divine kindness, is totally one with him. Totally bound up and united in one with him. Not as a compound added feature to God. It's not an added feature. It's not a feature. It is totally whole oneness with God. This is, now, why this is so difficult to understand, and we've dealt with this before, this concept, is because we also have intelligence and kindness. But the way it is within us, it's a compound. We're a compound of many qualities. 10 qualities, 10 soul qualities, 3 intellectual, Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, and 7 emotional. And they are part of us, but they're not one with us. Meaning, they're a part of us, they're a makeup of who we are, but it is not a perfect unity and oneness with us, because I have to choose them. I have to choose to use intelligence. I have to choose to act, to use my kindness or my compassion or whatever attribute or power of the soul I have. And as within us, we call it a power of the soul. Why? Because it's a power, it's a potential. It doesn't have to be realized. But God is one with his divine attributes, meaning just as he is, so is his divine attributes. They just are as a result. Meaning that they're not a power of his that he chooses. Oh, look at that, Ronnie Fine down there. He's giving a Tanya class. Let's be kind to him today. Went the extra mile today for something. I'll be kind to him today. That means God is kind of taking something of him and choosing now to use this. That's the way we would look at God, because that's the way we are. But as we've mentioned many times, that's creating God in our image. Here the Alter Rebbe is telling something that is something we can't experience. It's beyond our intellectual true appreciation. And ultimately, it's something that he said we have to take on faith, because we can't really understand this. We can say the words, we can understand why it has to be that way, because in me, what I am, or the qualities of my soul, are powers or potentials that may be realized, may not be realized. I might be self-actualized or not. But by God, his kindness, his intelligence, even though, again, through tzimtzum contraction, it becomes an emanated reality, not a created, but emanated reality, that he's infinitely removed from, and yet at the same time, totally bound up with it, and one with those divine attributes. Therefore, God's kindness is always, just as he is always, so likewise his kindness is. His intelligence is always, as a result. Again, we can understand why it must be that way. We can't truly understand, because this is beyond our reality. So if it's not something in your world, then it's truly impossible to really understand it. We can partially get it, and therefore it's a faith that transcends intellect. That is today's very abstract teaching. Any questions? Remember, 2 question marks before you ask a question. Please do that. It makes it easier. Am I missing something? I don't see a question. Do we have here? Oh, Eliana. Please.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. On that last part that you were talking about with, that I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but, God's kindness isn't, for instance, a choice. He's not choosing to say, oh, you were good, here's extra kindness for you. How does that relate to the concept of, measure for measure? Like if you're doing one thing, is that just part like a mechanism of how the world is constructed, or is that coming out of, Hesed or Binah? Like, where does that come from?
Excellent question. So, and thank you for asking that, because, you just reminded me, I always have to reset the room, as the language is, right? We need context on this. Our reference point over here is about God as creator. God as creator, he is always, there will always be in the act of creation, divine intelligence, divine kindness, divine severity, divine compassion. All of the divine attributes will be interplaying within creation at all times, because God is creating the world, something from nothing, at all times. So it is coming from the Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God, that is vested into the divine attributes that interplay and bring existence into the world. What you mentioned, Ileana, and really thank you for mentioning it, because again, this is so important. This part in Tanya that we're speaking about is about the power of creator within creation. What you mentioned is about our relationship to God, right? Our relationship to God. You do good, then, isn't there some kind of reward that we get? And if you do bad, then isn't something negative that comes? So that is beyond this concept over here that we're speaking about, of the power of creator within creation. That is how we connect to God himself. That is not limited and defined in this manner. And and as a result, what we're getting is from the internal desire and will of God that is not that's not pending, or is not limited, is not part of God as creator. It's beyond that. And from that level, you can get things that are beyond the divine attributes themselves, because you're touching God himself. That's the basic idea of the distinction that we need to make over here. And therefore, let me put it in other terms. There's nothing new under the sun. The creative power of God is consistent and constant, of something from nothing. There's nothing new under the sun except when you do a mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, you go over the sun, meaning you're going over nature. You're going over beyond God as creator. What you're doing is actually creating something new. You're creating a union between the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shechina, creating a union between the male part of God and the female part of God. And what does that mean when you create a union? Is you beget new life, just as it's reflected down here, a union between male and female, which, by the way, is accordingly the only kind of union that there is. And of course, it's got to be kosher between husband and wife, right? But that, because through that union, through that act, you beget, okay, down here is a potential of new life, but up there, in the spiritual world, it is new life. It's a new light that you produce when you do a mitzvah, like we're doing right now. We create a new light, which brings new existence, new life, that will imbue us. That's beyond God as creator. Creator beneath the sun, in the metaphor, meaning that there's nothing new under the sun, right? I mean, it's God renewing creation, but it's just renewing creation. But to bring new light into creation, to bring new life into creation, is through us doing a mitzvah, that we are bound beyond the sun, beyond the creator in the act of creation, to God himself. So then it becomes a different system, and more, and and that will then trickle down into. So as a result, for example, if there is a trickle down effect of that connection to God beyond being the creator, but to him, that then can trickle down. That new light can now take that where there might be some kind of negativity, that some restraining of the light to a person, withholding something of the person, which might be reflected in health, in material prosperity and the like. Through that new light, it can now bring a new divine kindness that will be imbued into the individual. But that's coming not from the active creator, but the inner will, as opposed to the outer will. I mean, there's a lot more to discuss on this, but that's in brief. But thank you for that very good, excellent question.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, did that clarify some things?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Wonderful. Susan, how can we better relate to the lesson on an everyday existence? This is deep, right? So I hope what I just said, Susan, you asked that question, I think, before or maybe not. But I hope what we just explained now, giving it the context, resetting the room, so to speak, right, gave us a greater context and appreciation of what the deep learning that we're expressing over here, and what that means for us. I hope so. Okay, I don't see another question over here. Adi, Jeff, Mayor, Sina, Crystal, Tim, Eugene. Any questions? All right. Don't see any more here. As a reminder, today, 12:45, I have a class on Zoom, 770-770-6085. 6085, by the way, is my home address. 6085. So you have 770, which is, Chabad World Headquarters, 2 times, and then 6085. Not that that's going to help you to remember. For me it will, but it won't for you. Every Tuesday and Thursday, yes, 12 o'clock with Rabbi Mendy and 12:45 with myself. Also a reminder that a week today we will be starting the 3rd book, and we're going to bring this to a new level, our teachings. Till now we're learning Hasidic Chabad teachings, but what I'd like to bring everybody to is to a new level of doing it. Doing it means having ownership. How do you have ownership? Is that, throughout the day or after the class or wherever, and it doesn't have to be on a daily basis, is that you go over it and you actually write down. So I have a booklet I put together, not really a book, but a booklet. Eventually we'll, that every day from the teachings you can jot down some pointers for yourself, and then we're going to discuss on how you can personalize it. The teachings today, with Leanna's question, so it brought up to contextualize everything and to bring it in a more personal way, even though that was limited. But in the next part, which is the Epistle of Penitence, we will make it much more personal, in ways that we can learn from the daily teachings. I'm going to try. It's going to be, work on my end, but got to get there, got to do it. So at least get yourself the book. Hold on. Just realized I don't have here. If you go to TanyaRabbi.com, someone put that up for me. TanyaRabbi.com, but then in there, it's not on the /Tanya Journal, I think. You want to get at least the journal. You want to get the journal because by getting the journal, oh, you put it up. Thank you, Dan. Because by getting the journal, you can really up your learning. I'm also offering 5 sessions, and we're just about full in the sessions. How many people I'm going to have in the sessions, but definitely something you want to consider, at least to get the journal, so you can again try to make this real for you. All right, any other comments, any other questions?
Hey, Rabbi, real quick on the journal, is it available for, obviously for whatever cost, but for PDF download? Because I'm traveling right now and I don't know where I will be in order to receive it.
No, not really. Not for
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like 64 pages, so you don't want to. And it's a nice. Yeah. So it won't be available as a PDF. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? Okay. As always, this is amazing. Together daily like this. All right, folks. Davida, I miss anybody? Question? I don't think so. And if I miss something, we can always catch it the next day. All right, folks, I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day, a good Chodesh, a wonderful new month we should be blessed with. 10 more is also Rosh Chodesh, 2 days. And we will continue. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.